Linana and the carousel, the time before flowers. Once, in a time before flowers had yet awakened upon the earth, there lived a girl of such radiant beauty that the people called her Swan Splendor. Her hair shimmered like black silk spun in sunlight, and her eyes were deep as twilight skies just before the first star appeared. But it was not only her face that made her beloved, it was her heart, warm, golden, full of light that drew others to her, as though she were a flame in the midst of night. Her father, a merchant known across the lands, was her closest companion. He adored her, and she him. Where he traveled, she followed, her laughter spilling like silver bells. Their bond was woven tight, father and daughter bound by love, trust, and gentle joy. But joy, like the seasons, has its turning. Her father fell ill. The world seemed to dim for her as his strength faded. She kept vigil by his side, whispering stories and pressing her small hand to his fevered brow. But death is a thief, and one day it stole him away. The girl wept until her eyes could hold no more tears. Her mother, noble and proud, remarried in time. The man she chose was stern, sharp of tongue, and cold of manner. He had no love for the girl. His eyes narrowed whenever she entered a room, and his words cut as though dipped in iron. At first she endured in silence, but bitterness crept into her spirit. Over the years her golden heart dimmed, and the people, seeing her anger and sorrow made flesh, ceased to call her Swan Splendor. Now they called her Swan Plague, the merchant with the carousel. One day a stranger arrived in the land. He was a merchant too, though unlike others. His wares were not spices nor silks, but a carousel, a round wooden wonder adorned with painted creatures, its poles gleaming, its canopy bright with colors of sunset. The children of the town flocked to it, their laughter rising as they rode the prancing horses, the lions, and, at the very center, a swan of carved white wood with wings spread wide. Linana, though the world did not yet know her true name, stood at the edge of the circle. Her eyes, dulled by grief and bitterness, sparked faintly with the joy of childhood once more. She stepped forward, placed her hand upon the swan's neck, and climbed onto its back. When the carousel turned, she felt something stir within her, a long-forgotten warmth. The merchant watched her. His eyes were keen yet kind, and his heart stirred with recognition of a hidden light. When the ride ended, he drew her aside. "Truly," he said softly, his voice like wind through tall grass, "I have never seen a girl more splendid in all the land. Your heart shines with gold and brilliant light." She lowered her head, bitterness warring with longing. "You are mistaken. They call me Swan Plague. Terrible I have become, and terrible I am thought to be. Why do you speak so kindly?" The man's gaze did not falter. "Names are but shadows. I would call you Swan Splendor." And at that word her father's memory surged before her eyes, the warmth of his smile, the strength of his hands. Tears welled unbidden. The merchant leaned close and whispered, "When midnight comes, when all children sleep, the swan upon this carousel awakens. Whosoever sits upon her back will fly with her across the sky, but you must tell no one. Come at twilight, when the first little stars begin to glow, and the honor shall be yours, the first flight." That night, as the first stars pricked the velvet sky, the girl slipped from her house. She crept to the square where the carousel stood silent and still. Yet when she laid her hand upon the swan, its wooden feathers softened, its eyes shimmered with life. The creature stirred, shook its wings, and lifted her upon its back. The carousel spun once, twice, thrice, and then the swan rose from the ground. Higher and higher it carried her until the rooftops lay like toys below. She gasped, breathless, as the city lights gleamed like fallen stars. When at last the swan touched ground again, the merchant was waiting. She whispered her true name for the first time in years. "My name is Linana." The man bowed as though receiving a queen's secret. "Then, Linana, it shall be. Journeys beyond. Night after night she returned. Each time the swan flew farther, showing her new wonders. She confided in the merchant of her father's death, her mother's remarriage, her cruel stepfather. He listened with a gravity that soothed her wounds. On the third night the swan bore her across mountains and valleys until they came to a strange land, unfamiliar and vast. When her feet touched earth, the swan took wing and vanished. "Wait!" she cried. "Do not leave me!" But the night swallowed it. She stood by a small lake, its surface glassy beneath the moon. There real swans glided. She climbed upon the back of the largest, and as it carried her across the water, its wings suddenly lifted. "Oh, noble swan," she pleaded, "bring me back to my country. The swan of the carousel has forgotten me." The swan obeyed, soaring until the familiar land lay beneath her once more. The merchant met her with grave eyes. The carousel swan must always return before dawn. If it lingers, it hardens back into wood, turning to iron in the sky, and falls to ruin. Do you understand? Linana nodded, awe and sorrow mingling. But the swan of that other country longed to join the carousel, and the merchant, who held powers greater than men could guess, granted its wish. Soon more swans followed, each bearing her across waters, skies, and lands unknown. Night after night she returned with new companions. The carousel, once filled with beasts of painted wood, became a wheel of living swans. And one night, with a sound like 1,000 wings, the whole carousel rose from the earth and flew toward the land of swans. The flames. The merchant revealed another secret. Within this carousel burned 3 little flames. When the first fades, a life ends on earth. When the second fades, a new soul is born. And when the third fades, joy enters a heart. Linana watched the flames flicker in wonder, entranced by their mystery. The carousel became not only her escape, but the heartbeat of her world. Yet sorrow returns to all. One day, the merchant grew pale and weak. His voice faltered, his hands trembled, and at last death claimed him too. The flames went dark. The carousel stilled. The swans froze like statues. The people, seeing it lifeless, cast it into a deep pit in the earth. Linana's grief was bottomless, the lake of swans. But one day across the skies, a swan from the other land came for her. It carried her away far from the pit to a small house beside a lake filled with swans. There she dwelt, wrapped in sorrow. The swans spoke to her, whispering of an old woman who lived deep in the earth. This woman, a keeper of great magic, could grant eternal life to swans. She too had many, and when the carousel had been buried, she claimed it as her own. She filled it with living swans and countless flames, so many that the carousel became vast, wondrous, and eternal. There Linana found her home. The carousel was no longer a wheel of wood, but a palace of light and wings. She rode with her swans across waters, through skies, and even beneath the earth. And some say that still she rides the eternal carousel. So remember, if ever in the deep of night you glimpse a carousel rising through the heavens, lit by flickering flames and borne on the wings of swans, it is Linana you behold. Linana, the girl once called Swan Splendor and Swan Plague, who found her truest name among the stars. And if you meet her, gentle traveler, ask her kindly, perhaps she will take you with her. Before the flowers, long before blossoms unfurled upon the earth, before meadows rippled with color, and before gardens breathed fragrance, there lived a girl whose beauty seemed itself a promise of flowers yet to come. The people called her Swan Splendor, for her grace was white and shining as the wings of a swan, and her heart was pure gold, radiant as morning light upon a still lake. She was the daughter of a merchant, a man whose caravans brought spices and fabrics from far-off lands, yet whose greatest treasure was not locked in his chest, but walked beside him in the form of his child. Wherever he journeyed, the girl was there, her laughter like a silver bell ringing above the creak of wagon wheels and the clatter of hooves. "Father," she would ask as they traveled, "will you tell me again of the far cities beyond the mountains?" And her father, who never tired of her voice, would smile and say, "I will tell you, little swan, for you are the light of my eyes. Beyond those peaks lies a city where the roofs shine like bronze under the sun, and there are gardens where birds speak in tongues sweeter than flutes." She would clap her hands, eyes wide, her imagination taking flight as if she herself had seen those places. In the evenings, when campfires flickered, she would curl at his side. "Father, do you know," she whispered once, "that you are the only one who truly knows me?" "I know," he replied, pressing his hand over her hair. "And as long as I draw a breath, I will never let that light in you dim." But breath is fleeting. It came upon him slowly at first, a cough that lingered, a weariness that would not leave. Then swiftly, cruelly, the sickness deepened. His strength withered like autumn leaves under frost. Linana, though none yet called her by her true name, sat beside his bed through the long nights, cooling his fevered brow, whispering the stories he once told her. "You will be well again," she said, though her voice trembled. "You must be. Who else will tell me of the bronze-roofed city? Who else will call me little swan?" He smiled faintly, though his lips were pale. "Remember, my child, the light in you is your own. No one can take it, not even death. Guard it well." But the dawn came one morning, and with it silence. His breath was gone. The girl wept until her eyes were swollen and her body ached. The world itself seemed colder, dimmer, without him. Her mother, noble, stern, a woman of lineage, did not long remain a widow. Within the year she remarried, taking as husband a man of strong stature and harsher spirit. He looked upon the girl and saw not beauty nor light, but a burden not his own. From the first day his words to her were clipped, sharp-edged. "Hold your tongue, stand straight, do not wander in idleness." She tried at first to please him, but nothing she did seemed enough. His disapproval hung upon her like a shadow. Her heart, once golden, grew heavy with sorrow. Her laughter, once like bells, turned bitter. When she walked among the people, they whispered no longer of swan splendor, but of swan plague. For bitterness had twined around her like a creeping vine, and anger flashed in her eyes where once only light had lived. Thus the years passed. A child once radiant had become shrouded, and the world forgot the girl she had been. But fate, though it hides, is never idle. The merchant with the carousel. It was on an afternoon heavy with the scent of dust and market spices that wonder came to the land. Word ran through the streets like wind through tall grass. A new merchant has arrived, and he has brought a marvel. The people gathered in the square, children tugging their mothers' skirts, fathers pausing from their ledgers, youths darting ahead with eager eyes. There, upon the cobbles, the stranger had set his treasure, a carousel, a great round platform crowned by a canopy of scarlet and gold, painted with stars and curling vines. Upon its circle stood carved creatures, horses frozen mid-gallop, lions with flowing manes, deer with poised hooves, and at the very heart of them all a swan of white wood, wings spread as though forever at the edge of flight. When the merchant touched its brass lever, the carousel groaned, then began to turn. Music swelled, thin pipes and drums that seemed not of this world, and the creatures stirred, not alive, but so close to life that the children shrieked with delight. "Come, come," the merchant called, his voice smooth as river water. "Come ride, and feel the world spin beneath you." The children clambered up, laughter ringing through the square. Their faces glowed as the creatures carried them in circles, round and round, faster with each pass. Even the grown folk, jaded by toil, could not help but smile. At the edge of the crowd stood Linana. No one called her that, not yet. To the people she was swan plague, a girl clouded by sorrow and scorn. But as she watched the carousel turn, her breath caught. The colors, the music, the carved swan with its head arched proud, it all stirred a memory buried deep of days when laughter had been her daily bread. Almost without willing it, she stepped forward. The merchant's eyes found her at once. His gaze was not the common gaze of townsfolk, quick to mock, quick to judge. His was deeper, searching, as though he saw not what she had become, but what she truly was. She laid a trembling hand upon the carved swan's neck. The wood felt warm beneath her palm. Slowly she climbed upon its back. When the carousel turned, she closed her eyes, and for a fleeting moment she was a child again. Her father's laughter in her ear, the world wide and bright. When the ride stilled, she did not at once dismount. She sat very still, as though awakening from a dream. The merchant approached, his cloak brushing the dust. "Truly," he said, his voice low so that only she could hear, "I have never seen a girl more splendid in all the land. Your heart is filled with gold and brilliant light." Her head snapped up, startled. She searched his face for mockery, but found none. Her voice came bitter, almost a growl. "You are wrong. They call me Swan Plague. I am terrible now, and they know it. Why do you look at me so?" The merchant's eyes softened. "Because I see the truth. Names are shadows given by those who cannot see. If I must name you, I would call you again what you once were, Swan Splendor." At that word, memory broke her like a wave. Her father's face, pale in his last days, whispering, "The light in you is your own." She turned away, blinking hard. But the merchant leaned closer as if to share a secret. "Come to me when the stars first prick the sky. Tell no one. For when midnight falls and children dream, the swan upon this carousel awakens. Whosoever sits upon her back shall soar through the heavens. And if you come, child, the honor will be yours." His words lingered in her heart long after she returned home, long after her stepfather's sharp tongue lashed at her again, long after her mother's silence stung. She lay awake that night, watching through her window for the first star, and when she saw it glimmer, faint but steady, she rose. She would go, the awakening swan. The night was hushed, the streets of the town fallen silent, doors were bolted, hearts dimmed, and only the faint creak of shutters broke the stillness. Above, the heavens stretched dark and endless, pricked with the first trembling stars. Linana walked alone through the narrow lanes, her cloak drawn close against the cool breath of evening. Her heart pounded with a strange mixture of dread and longing. What if it is only a trick? She wondered. What if the swan does not stir at all? Yet beneath her doubt ran a current of hope, thin, bright, dangerous as fire. At last she came to the square. There stood the carousel, silent as a sentinel, its painted canopy catching the starlight. The swan loomed at the center, its wings spread, its beak raised high, but now the wood seemed softer, less lifeless than by day. Linana stepped forward, her footsteps echoing against the stone. She reached out, fingers trembling, and laid her palm upon the swan's carved neck. The wood was warm. The swan shuddered. Slowly, impossibly, its eyes glimmered with pale light. The carved feathers softened into down, its wings rustled like a sigh. With a low, rising cry, the creature came alive. "Come," whispered a voice, not the merchant's, not anyone's, but the swan's itself, deep and resonant, like wind over water. Without hesitation, Linana swung onto its back. Her legs gripped its feathered sides. Her hands clutched the arch of its neck. The carousel groaned once, twice, and then it spun, round, round, faster and faster, until the square blurred. With a sudden lurch, the swan broke free of the circle and lifted into the air. Linana gasped, clinging tightly as the ground fell away. The rooftops grew small beneath her, chimneys no more than toy blocks, streets silver ribbons in the moonlight. The city glowed with countless lanterns, each window a golden star. She laughed, a sound she had not made in years, bright and full and utterly free. The wind tore through her hair, and her eyes brimmed with tears of wonder. Higher they flew, until the city lights were no more than scattered jewels on a dark cloth. The night spread endless around her, and for the first time since her father's death, she felt the ache in her heart ease. At last the swan wheeled back, descending in wide circles until its talons touched the earth once more. The carousel awaited, its music faint, its circle turning slowly as though to welcome them home. The merchant was there, his cloak drawn close, his eyes alight with quiet triumph. "Well, child?" he asked softly. Linana slid from the swan's back, her knees trembling. She looked at him, and in her eyes shone not bitterness but something reborn. My name, she whispered, is Linana. The merchant bowed deeply, as though greeting royalty. Then Linana you shall be. Guard that name well, for it belongs to no one but you, and she who had once been Swan Splendor, who had once been Swan Plague, felt for the first time that her true self had been spoken aloud. Journeys beyond the stars. Night after night the air held promise. When the first little star pricked the sky, Linana would rise, her heart catching at the memory of the merchant's words. Cloaked against the cool hush of twilight, she made her way to the square, stealthy footsteps echoing in empty alleys. Her stepfather's house lay behind her. Dark windows shuttered. The world ahead was full of possibility. The carousel waited. The wood of the swan gleamed in starlight. The painted creatures curved beneath the canopy as though breathing softly. Linana's palms tingled as she touched the swan's softened feathers. It warmed to her touch, its eyes glowing with pale fire. With a tremor that was part fear, part joy, she swung onto its back. This time she held on harder. The wind whipped her cloak, pulled her hair like strings of shadow. The world below fell away, city lights dwindling, domes and towers shrinking, the moon pulling them upward. Linana closed her eyes, felt the beating of wings in her bones, the rush of night rushing past. She told the merchant, mid-flight, in words carried by the wind, that her father had died, that her mother had remarried, that her stepfather was cruel. Her voice cracked, but the swan held steady, carrying her skyward in spite of storms of grief. On the third night she flew even farther. They passed over rivers that threaded beneath mountains, over forests where trees whispered secrets. She saw strange lights in valleys she had never dreamt of, and skies so wide and empty she felt small and infinite at once. Then, unexpectedly, the swan descended and landed in a land so strange, so distant, that the air smelled of unknown blossoms and soft rain she had never felt. Her foot touched the ground, and the swan, her companion, her vessel, lifted off without her. "Wait!" she cried. The sound seemed swallowed by the breath of that strange land. But the swan was gone, lifted into the dusk, its silhouette disappearing in flight. Alone she stood by a small lake, whose surface mirrored a sky she did not know. Real swans glided there, alive, soft-feathered, luminous in their silent grace. Her heart pounded in her chest, longing and fear twined together. Without thinking, she stepped into the shallow water, spotted the largest of the swans, its plumage white as marble, its eyes gentle. She climbed upon its back. It moved at first with quiet ripples, then began to rise, water dripping, wings spreading like clouds parting in dawn. Her voice caught. "Oh," she said, "can you bring me back to my country? The swan of the carousel has probably forgotten about me." The swan obeyed, cutting a path back across land and sky, and when at last she returned, the lights of her home glowing faint in the distance, the carousel merchant waited. He regarded her with solemn compassion. "Do you understand now?" he asked, studying her face. She nodded, breathless. "The swan of the carousel always must return in time," he said. "If it does not, it will harden into metal in the air and crash down." Linana swallowed. She understood. She understood that every night balanced on a blade, the delight of flight against the danger of forgetting, of straying beyond safe return. Yet even beyond that, the swan of the other country, the real swan, wished to have a place in the carousel, and the merchant, gifted with magical power, made it possible. Night after night, Linana brought new swans in secret until the carousel grew full of living swans, white and graceful, soft and bright, and each carried her beyond the limits of her world. Then came a night heavy with wings. The carousel, now a wheel of swans rather than wood, rose from the earth in a single exultant cry of wings. It flew, swan after swan, flying to the land of the swans, into skies ablaze with stars, leaving behind only whispers of wonder among those who slept. The covenant of wings, The carousel did not return that night. The townspeople awoke to find the square strangely hollow, the familiar whir of gears and music gone. Where once stood wood and paint and brass, there was only a bare circle of trampled dust, and at its heart a faint shimmer like the ghost of turning wings. Linana, who had returned before dawn, stood silently by that circle. Her heart ached with absence, yet she knew the swans were not lost. They had chosen the sky, chosen flight everlasting. Still, she felt the merchant's gaze upon her. "You gave them life," he said, appearing from the shadows, his voice low, "and with it, freedom. Do you know what that means?" Linana lowered her eyes. "That I can never call them back." The merchant nodded. "Yes, but also that you belong to their covenant. Wherever they go, you are bound to follow one way or another." That night she dreamed of endless horizons. She saw the carousel flying above mountains, its swans beating together like the spokes of a living wheel. She saw children in faraway lands gazing up, hearing music from the stars, feeling wonder stir in their sleep. When she woke, a feather lay on her pillow, silver white, soft, warm, as though it had been pressed there by the swan's breast. She carried it with her, and it glowed faintly whenever she was near water or moonlight or sorrow. From that day, Linana began to wander. She left her stepfather's house quietly at dawn, walking paths no one else dared. She spoke with rivers whose currents seemed to answer her. She traced constellations across the night sky and felt the pull of wings in her blood, and always the feather glimmered, guiding her like a compass. One evening, in the hush before rain, she returned to the empty square. The merchant was waiting, his eyes like deep wells of time. "The carousel may not return to earth," he said, "but it calls for you. There will come a time when the sky itself will open, and you must decide, remain below or join the covenant forever." Linana felt no fear, only a deep, steady knowing her life would never again be bound by rooftops or cruel voices. She belonged to the covenant of wings, and in the distance, high beyond sight, she thought she heard it, the faintest echo of the carousel song turning in the heavens, the gathering of swans. The nights came one after another, each more wondrous than the last. Linana, still carrying the ache of her father's absence and the bitterness of her stepfather's cruelty, found a strange solace in the company of the carousel merchant. His words held both mystery and comfort, and though he often spoke in riddles, she felt his gaze carried the same warmth her father once had. On the second night, she rode the carousel swan through clouds painted silver by moonlight, and she dared to whisper her grief, the truth of her father's death, the wound of her mother's second marriage, the sharpness of her stepfather's disdain. The merchant listened quietly when she returned, nodding as though he had known all along, and yet his silence wrapped her like a cloak. It was on the third night that everything changed. The swan lifted her higher than ever before, so high that the very stars seemed to lean closer. At last it set her down upon the shore of a foreign lake, still and gleaming under a vast sky. The air was cool, scented with reeds and night-blooming lilies. Around the water's edge she saw them, real swans, dozens of them, their feathers glistening like fragments of the moon. When the carousel swan released her, it beat its wings once, twice, and vanished into the heavens, leaving Linana alone. "Wait!" she cried, voice trembling, hand outstretched. But the sky only shimmered with its fading glow. Her heart pounded. The silence pressed upon her. Yet from the lake a great swan glided toward her. Its eyes shone with a knowing intelligence, and when it lowered itself beside her, Linana felt no fear. She stepped onto its back as though she had done so all her life. The swan carried her over the waters, smooth as drifting cloud. Then, with a sudden surge, it rose, its wings cutting into the sky, carrying her higher, higher. "Oh," Linana whispered, clutching its neck, "can you bring me home? The carousel swan has forgotten me." The great bird gave no answer, yet it obeyed. It flew across dark forests and rivers like silver threads until the familiar lantern lights of her homeland shone below. It set her gently by the edge of the square where the carousel merchant awaited. She ran to him breathless. "The swan left me," she cried, "but another came, another from a faraway land. It brought me back." The merchant's eyes glimmered with a light deeper than joy, though his tone was grave. "Now you understand," he said softly. "The carousel swan must always return before dawn, or else it will harden in the air, become metal again, and fall. That is its burden. But the swans of other countries, they too long to join the dance." Linana's breath caught. "They want to be part of the carousel?" He nodded. "Yes, and you, Linana, you are the bridge. They will follow you, one by one." And so it was. Night after night she returned. Each time she flew upon the carousel swan, it brought her farther, to new lakes, new rivers, new shining realms where swans waited. She would ride one back, whispering to it, coaxing it, guiding it toward the carousel. The merchant would raise his hands in quiet incantation, and the new swan would fold itself into the wheel of wooden steeds, feathers glowing, becoming half creature, half carved marvel. The carousel grew strange and splendid. Where once only painted horses turned in endless circles, now swans of every size and hue rose among them, some sleek and black as midnight, some white as falling snow, others shimmering with pale gold or faint blue, as though kissed by dawn. Their eyes burned with living fire. The children of the town clapped their hands by day, never guessing the secret of night. They only knew that the carousel had become lovelier, fuller, its wings spreading wider. And Linana, who had once been called Swan Plague, was no longer mocked. To the swans she was a sister, a herald, a chosen keeper of their longing. To the merchant she was Swan Splendor once more. At last the carousel could hold no more. One night beneath a sky thick with stars, every swan stirred at once. Their wings trembled, their necks arched. Linana, standing at the center platform, felt the air grow electric, humming with power. The merchant looked at her with solemn pride. "It is time," he whispered. The carousel shuddered, and then it rose. The music pipes shrieked and sang, but the sound was no longer earthly. It was the echo of wind through endless skies. The carousel lifted from the ground, wheels spinning, lanterns blazing, and the whole circle of swans beat their wings together as one. Up it climbed, leaving the town square, leaving the earth itself. Below, the children stirred in their dreams, smiling in their sleep as a shadow of wings passed over their houses. Linana clung to the railing, laughter and tears mingling on her face. She felt the bond of every swan, the rush of sky through her hair, the pulse of eternity in her chest. The carousel had become a vessel of flight, a bridge between worlds. And from that night forth, whenever a carousel was seen flying across the midnight sky, people whispered, "It is Linana with her swans, the three flames." The carousel drifted above the earth like a second moon, its lanterns blazing, its swans exultant. Linana felt the nights blur together, each flight carrying her farther into wonder. Yet as the marvel of it grew, so too did the merchant's eyes grow heavy, shadowed by thoughts he seldom spoke aloud. One evening, as the carousel settled once more in the square before dawn, he beckoned Linana aside. The town lay still around them, cobblestones damp with dew, but his voice carried the hush of prophecy. "There is a secret within the carousel," he said, resting his frail hand upon its polished wood. "Few living have seen it, and fewer still have understood. Come, Linana, tonight you must know." He led her up the platform steps, past the proud ranks of swans. They dipped their heads as she passed, feathers brushing her sleeves like a benediction. At the heart of the carousel stood a brass lamp with 3 small flames dancing within it. Their glow was unlike the lanterns that ringed the ride. This fire flickered with colors that did not belong to earthly fire, pale silver, deep blue, and gold that pulsed like a heartbeat. Linana's eyes widened. "What are they?" she whispered. The merchant's face softened, though his breath was shallow. "3 flames," he said, "threads of the world's great loom. The first is the flame of passing. When it fades, the soul departs from the earth. He gestured to the pale silver light, which quivered as though it mourned every beat of its own dwindling. The second, he continued, pointing to the deep blue flame, is the flame of beginning. When it wanes, another breath enters the world, a child's cry, a first heartbeat. And the third, Linana asked, gazing at the golden spark that burned brightest of all, warm and merry. The merchant's eyes shone with both joy and sorrow. The third is the flame of joy. When it flickers away, happiness finds a home in some soul, an unexpected smile, a lifted burden, a heart made light. Linana stared, enraptured, the firelight dancing in her eyes. She thought of her father's laughter, the warmth of his hand upon her hair, the way the world had felt safe when he was near. She thought of the sorrow that had followed, and of the joy she had felt soaring upon the swan's wings. All of it was here, reflected in these flames, death, birth, and joy, forever circling one another. "It's beautiful," she breathed. The merchant nodded, though his shoulders trembled as though the weight of years pressed too heavily upon him. "Yes, child, beautiful and fragile, for all things are tied to these flames." But in the days that followed, Linana saw his strength fail. His hands, once steady as he tended the carousel's mysteries, now shook. His steps faltered. His face grew pale. The lines around his eyes etched deeper with pain. One dawn he did not rise to greet her. He lay instead upon a cot near the carousel, his breathing shallow, his gaze turned toward the swans that seemed to keep vigil. "Linana," he whispered, "remember what I told you. Guard the flames." Tears stung her eyes. She took his hand, pressing it to her cheek. "You must not leave me," she pleaded. "Without you, what will become of the carousel? What will become of the swans?" But his eyes had already grown distant, fixed on some horizon beyond her reach. With a final, fragile sigh, the merchant's soul slipped away. At that same moment, Linana felt it, a tremor in the air. She turned toward the lamp of three flames, and her heart broke. The silver flame sputtered and went dark. Then, as if in sympathy, the blue flame shrank to a pinprick and vanished. Last of all, the golden flame wavered weakly, then faded into silence. Darkness claimed the lamp, and with the extinguishing of the flames, the carousel itself fell still. The swans froze in place, their feathers dulling, their eyes dimming until they were nothing more than painted wood once again. The music ceased, the great wheel halted, and the wonder drained away like water from a broken vessel. Word spread quickly through the town. The marvel that had once lifted children's hearts was now a husk, silent and heavy. People gathered, whispering of ill omens. "No one wants a carousel that does not turn," they said. "Better to cast it away lest its stillness curse the land." So it was decided. With ropes and oxen, they dragged the lifeless carousel from the square down to a deep hollow in the earth. They toppled it into the pit, wood groaning, brass striking stone, wings cracking as the swans broke against one another. Then they shoveled earth over it, burying its silence in the dark. Linana stood apart from them, tears staining her cheeks, her body trembling with grief. Her swans, her beloved swans, lay buried beneath the soil, and the man who had been her guide and friend was gone forever. She could not be comforted. The town turned back to its daily labors, forgetting the marvel as though it had never been. But Linana carried the silence like a wound in her heart. Every night she wandered to the hollow where the carousel lay entombed, and there she wept, calling softly for the swans, though no answer ever came. Until one night a shadow passed over the moon, and the beating of wings stirred the still air. A swan, white as snow, vast as a ship's sail, descended from the foreign lands of her dreams. It lowered its neck, and Linana, sobbing with relief, climbed upon its back. The swan carried her far away beyond the town, beyond sorrow, toward the lakes of the other world, and Linana, broken yet unafraid, knew she would not return. The house by the Swan Lake. The world felt empty after the loss of the merchant, the extinguishing of the three flames, and the silencing of the carousel. Linana wandered through the forests and meadows near her town. her heart heavy as stone, her tears leaving tracks upon the soft earth. Nights were the hardest, when shadows stretched long across the empty square, and her ears could no longer catch the faint echo of wings above. She had nowhere to go, no swans to call her own, no laughter to fill the void, no promise of flight beyond sorrow. Each step she took was weighted with grief, each breath a reminder of what had been lost. The people of the town no longer noticed her, for she had become a shadow of the child once called Swan Splendor, her beauty and light dimmed by years of pain. And yet the world still had whispers of magic, hidden in the currents of air and the quiet places where even sorrow could not reach. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in bruised purples and soft gold, Linana heard a sound unlike any she had known, a faint rustle of wings, soft yet urgent, carrying a cadence that stirred memory in her bones. From the darkening skies a swan descended. It glided with elegance and certainty, its feathers gleaming like moonlight on water. Its eyes held recognition, deep and patient, as though it had searched across continents and years just to find her. Linana's heart leapt. She ran to the water's edge, where a small lake reflected the stars in trembling silver. The swan landed gently upon the surface, ripples curling outward like the whisper of a lullaby. Without hesitation, Linana stepped onto its back. It rose, not with the urgency of flight, but with the tenderness of homecoming. It carried her to a small house nestled at the lake's edge. Smoke rose lazily from the chimney, curling in spirals that danced among the reeds. The house was humble, yet it radiated warmth, and the air around it seemed alive with gentle magic. Linana stepped down, feeling the soft earth beneath her feet, water lapping at the stones near the door. "This shall be my home," she murmured, her voice breaking. "Here, with the swans." As the night deepened, whispers rose from the water and the reeds. Linana tilted her head, listening. They spoke of the earth below, of a woman who dwelled in a hollow deep beneath the soil, a woman of great age and greater power. "She has lived through centuries," the voices murmured. "Her magic is bound to the swans, and the swans to her. She can make them live forever, and she knows the way of the carousel, the flame, the sky itself." Linana shivered. The thought of such magic, so vast and ancient, filled her with awe and hope. She realized then that the deep sorrow she carried could be transformed, not erased, but lifted, shared, woven into something larger than herself. Night after night, Linana would watch the lake, tend to the swans, and listen to the faint whispers from below. They spoke of patience, of guardianship, of journeys yet to come. And in time, Linana felt her own heart begin to heal, her sorrow tempered by purpose. Here, by the small swan lake, she made a choice to live in harmony with the swans, to care for them, to guard the secret of the carousel, and to await the moment when the magic of the old woman beneath the earth might once again call the swans and perhaps the carousel itself into full life. Linana was no longer a girl defined by loss. She was the keeper of wings, the companion of swans, and the one who could listen to the whispers of worlds beneath and above. And when she spoke to the swans, they answered in gentle nods, as though understanding every thought of her heart. She would never be alone again. The eternal carousel. Time passed in the quiet embrace of the swan lake, but magic, as it often does not sleep. Beneath the earth, in a hollow carved from ancient stone, the old woman stirred. She had lived through centuries, her hair white as moonlight, her eyes deep with knowing, her hands threaded with the power to weave life into the world itself. Linana, tending to her swans by the water's edge, felt a tremor beneath her feet, a gentle thrumming pulse, as though the earth itself were awakening. The whispers from below grew clearer, no longer distant murmurs, but voices that danced through the air. "Come, child of wings, come to the heart where magic never dies." The swans gathered around her, their feathers catching the moonlight, eyes shining like polished pearls. Linana took a deep breath. and with a quiet resolve stepped onto the back of the largest swan. It lifted gently, carrying her through the forest and over hills until they reached a hidden entrance among the roots of ancient trees. The air was thick with enchantment, shimmering with the scent of earth and water and fire. There, in the cavern below, the old woman waited, her arms open, and Linana could see what she had dreamed of all these years, the carousel reborn. It was unlike anything she had ever known. No longer a simple circle of painted wood, it was vast, stretching into the shadows of the cavern, filled with swans of every size and hue. Their feathers gleamed like polished ivory, onyx and gold, their eyes alive with intelligence and light. The carousel's central lamp now held countless flames, flickering in colors beyond comprehension. Silver, sapphire, emerald, ruby, and gold, each flame breathing life into the swans, each a spark of joy, of birth, of passing, of hope, and of endless wonder. The old woman spoke, her voice a song that seemed to vibrate with the bones of the earth itself. Linana, keeper of wings, this carousel is yours. These swans shall live forever, and their flight shall know no end. You may ride through sky, water, and underworld, carrying the joy and sorrow of countless hearts and weaving them into the tapestry of the world. Linana's eyes shone with tears. She stepped onto the central platform, the swans bowing their heads in acknowledgement, and whispered a vow, "I will guard you. I will fly with you. I will carry the stories of all who see your light." From that moment, Linana became part of the carousel, and the carousel became part of her. She flew over the lakes and forests of her homeland, over the mountains and rivers of distant lands, and through the caverns of the underworld, where rivers of crystal light and shadows intertwined. She discovered hidden realms, where the swans glided through silver waters beneath eternal skies, where stars reflected in their wings, and where magic wove the very air into music and movement. Every night, when the first stars pricked the heavens, the carousel would rise from its hidden cavern. The wind sang in harmony with the beating of wings, and if a traveler, a dreamer, or a child looked up, they might see it, a great circle of swans flying through the midnight sky, lanterns glowing, flames flickering, the music of wings carrying a melody older than time. "It is Linana," people would whisper, she and her swans gliding through the night, and so the legend endured. For as long as the skies were dark and the first stars shimmered, the eternal carousel would sail above the world, carrying Linana and her swans on journeys beyond imagination, a bridge between heaven and earth, between sorrow and joy, between the mortal heart and the endless magic of the universe. The girl who had once been called Swan Splendor, then Swan Plague, had become something greater, a guardian of wings, a steward of the flames, a traveler of realms, and a legend whispered by the wind. And those who were lucky enough to glimpse the carousel in flight would know in that fleeting moment that wonder still existed, and that Linana and her swans were watching always from the midnight sky. The tale ends here, as the world sleeps beneath the eternal beating of wings and the soft, ever-glowing flames of the carousel.